Would be the green reindustrialization and the economic industrial complex of health, and with sustainable practice in the health sector can help economic growth and social rights. This debate for advanced research and innovation in health in order to have the green reindustrialization of our next panel. So let's go to the next conversation. The Executive of the National Development Industry, Mrs. Verena Hitner Barros. I would like to invite here in the panel the President of the Brazilian Research and Innovation, Embrapii, Mr. Francisco Saboya. Also, the Financial Director of the Development Bank of Minas Gerais, BDMG, Mr. Edmilson Gama. Superintendent of Innovation of FINEP, Mr. Rodrigo Secioso. Also, the President of Desenbahia, Mr. Paulo Costa. We'd also like the Executive Director of the Observatório for the Grupo FarmaBrasil, Mr. Marcelo Ramos. And for the comments to conduct this conversation, from the FarmaBrasil Group, Innovation and Access to Health, Mr. João Emilio Gonçalves. Good. Thank you. Good afternoon. They've given me the mission of concluding this panel in 1 hour, so I will start to short my initial speech, and so that we can do something very dynamic, so we can have a few questions at the end and we can interact. So firstly, I'd like to thank the ABDE for the invitation and congratulate them for carrying out this forum. ABDE has had a fundamental role in the discussion of the development and in Brazil, and a very modern, up-to-date agenda involving sustainable development agenda and how to work the instruments. At the end of last year, they launched the ABDE plan, aligned with what is up-to-date, most up-to-date in the world as regards industrial policies and development policies. This event happens in a very opportune moment where the government and private sector has been discussing a development agenda oriented to missions and in a convergence of analysis with the recreation of the CNDI, which is the agency to promote this governance. If private institutions have launched documents on their agenda of missions. They don't call it missions, but they converges. So this is important because it shows that the actors that have to work together, dialogue, this mission agenda are aligned toward the same direction. So in this context, the area of health has a huge potential because it fits in a very adequate manner in these, having the development of the sector a double objective. It contributes at the same time for the industrial development, is a sector that's highly intensive in technologies, that employs highly qualified workers, and at the same time contributes for an objective that certainly will be in any priority mission, that is the promotion and improvement of the access to health by the population. This is very clear in the mission statement of CNDI for the treatment of diseases, and like I mentioned, is convergent with what the ABDE 2030 plan says, that put health, or the mission of health, as an engine for development and reinforcing the demand and offer in Brazil. So it's very common to Brazil to think the agenda of missions, look at the US, and to compare with the dual technology of the. But when we look at Brazil and translate this, that this use of these instruments, what more fits is, I think, the health sector, because we think on the US with the size and demand and the technological needs of defense. But when we look at Brazil, the area in Brazil which has a purchasing power that can be directed towards innovation and production is in health, is in our single health system, SUS. And we have an ecosystem in Brazil made up by national plans that have, the big companies have grown at 10% rate, and from 2008 to 2015, they've grown in almost 11%. They invest 6% in research and development, and the system, health system, the size of SUS, big companies that invest in innovation, with academia that is very productive in this area of research, in the area of health. So we have a lot here to promote this industrial development with resilience, to amplify the access to health, and to contribute with the sustainability of SUS, which is that universal access and full access to health. So in this context, we inserted the objective of the panel is to debate the importance of finance in terms of front-end technology, and also I think we have here an excellent public to cover various policies, visions, and various of examples in how the national system has contributed to the development of the sector. So starting here with the panel, and since we talked so much about missions, I would like to start with Verena to talk a little bit about her vision. I think it's worthwhile talking to the context of missions and specifically of health. Good afternoon to all. It's a pleasure to be here in this such important panel and debate with friends and colleagues with whom I've been talking a lot. I'd like to thank the ABD and President Pancera for the invitation. CNDI, like I was commenting, it's a National Council for Industrial Development. It was created in 2004. It had important action until 2016 when it stopped working, and one of the actions of 100 days action by Lula was the recreation of this council. It has a great importance in the current framework, and for many reasons. The main due to that we have a geopolitical structure that is very favorable, that we can talk openly about industrial development. Differently from what happened less than 10 years ago, where the theme of industrial policies had to be taken with certain care. We can now talk openly about industrial policies. The other importance of the recreation of the CNDI, it increased in size. I think it's important to say an area for dialogue with the productive sector, and we're convinced in this country that it's not successful only society or only government doing industrial policy. So everybody has to participate. So it's an important space for dialogue and convergence. Our option to build from these missions comes firstly from some diagnostics that we had in the past. Maybe the most important diagnostic is the fact that the problem of industry cannot be thought something or only of the industry. It has to be understood as a big social issue, and that's why the health issue is one of the most important to advance in this discussion on industrial development. We built 6 missions that also included health. You have industrial chain of supplies and digital and others to guarantee food security. You have the health economic industry to reduce the vulnerabilities of SUS and increase the access to health and sanitation for better integration and production and well-being in cities. This is a theme that we sought out a lot of convergence with people from the PACs. The theme of digital transformation of the industry to increase productivity, decarbonization, and energy security to guarantee resources for future generations and defend security for sovereignty issues. So these are items that I want to see issues that the industry that we have as a society. There was also other big issue that we had, or the second biggest reason why we chose to work in these missions was the fact that the policy of industrial development cannot be thought exclusively as part of a Ministry of Industry and Commerce, but it has to be seen necessarily and works better if it's a policy of state.
So we always joke around with our colleagues from healthcare, and so the industrial healthcare complex, they have more infrastructure than the entire ministry. So it's important for us to work on these things. And if you start analyzing the specific goals that we added to resolution number 1 created by the CNDI, there's no specific goal that is going to say, we're going to analyze the specific goals and say, this one is part of the economic complex for healthcare. This is only for FINEP, for AB and IP. But these aim to promote the coordination and the interaction between all of the stakeholders in our society. So our initial design is like this. What have we been doing now? We are now creating our aspirations and goals, and this is important for us. Why? Because it has to be an ambitious goal, seductive enough that is going to generate attractiveness for the different stakeholders. We have gone over the phase that we should start thinking about goals that are only related to the government, to the state. Did the state achieve this goal or not? That's why we're having an aspirational goal, if I can say it like that. And regarding healthcare, I believe the goal has already shared the goal with us. The Minister of Health, Minister Nisia, says that most of the demands and needs that the SUS has in Brazil, they have to be met by the local market. And so, regarding Chris, ecological transformation is important for the government, decarbonization is important for the government, and also the productive intensification. If once again we arrive at a moment such as the pandemic, so as a country, we need to be able to find autonomous solutions. So the intensification of our chains, production chains, how are we going to value the national production, and all of this is important. From the perspective of the policies design, we also have some necessary instruments. We need to have a dialogue regarding what we're doing. And so we have the financial instruments, credits, and we have been discussing this with FINEP, with the BNDES. and we started thinking about criteria, priorities, what is the path ahead, and this is unprecedented when it comes to the design of our industrial policies. So there is almost an absolute idea, and Vice President Alckmin has been saying this, and President Lula as well. It's impossible nowadays for us to think about an industrial policy that is not connected to the innovation policies. That's why Embrapii and us, we have been discussing this, 26 billion reais for the industrial development. We include money from Embrapii, from FINEP, and from the BNDES. We organize this conversation about the development, and we also have non-financial instruments. What are non-financial instruments? Capacity building policies, quality policies, foreign trade policies. So we need policies that must be built in an autonomous way, and we understand that they are legitimate. And from our industrial development, we're going to be able to move into the future and create proposals to use other non-financial instruments. And our following steps, and we have to wrap up the policy by December of this year, is talking with our society about the bottlenecks that exist. So productive alienation, and I was having a chat earlier today with the Vega people, and they were saying how important it is for us to analyze what the government wants and the demands that exist when it comes to the development policies. So where should we tread upon? What about innovation, intensification, digital transformation of our industries? And this is important. And we have to analyze this with the productive sector, which is analyzing these instruments, because the users are my 10 minutes up. So the users of the policies, I was having an important chat with people regarding innovation, and the motto is the users know best regarding public policies, industrial development policies. The users, they know best, and they know the future pathways. And this is what we're going to discuss during our future steps. And we're going to deliver the policy by December of this year. Thank you very much. Thank you, Verena. It has to work out. It has to be ready by December. You mentioned many important things, and I'm going to highlight one of them. We need to coordinate with other sectors. With other policies, we have already seen that one ministry launched the policy, and the other ministries, they said, this has nothing to do with me. And they use these words exactly, and that's really bad. And so there are two main things. Institutionally speaking, the CNDI contributes to that because of its institutional design, and also it is legitimate. It is legitimate. Another thing that you mentioned is not thinking about the industrial problems that we have, only a problem of our industries. No. You can see a goal, a need from our society, and our industries are a mean to meet those demands. And this is going to help us avoid difficulties that we saw for the planning, for the execution of policies in the past. And when it comes to coordinating with other fields, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Marcelo Ramos, okay? Because this is one of the other important areas, and it's a ministry that has an important history when it comes to industrial policies. And if we look into the past, and if we start thinking about the policy to fight AIDS, or the policy to offer generic medication, and so you were just giving to our population access to health care. So, Mr. Marcelo, the floor is yours. So thank you so much on behalf of the top managers of the ministry. It's an honor to be here. Good afternoon to the audience. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists. As mentioned before, nowadays we have this reindustrialization issue. Some people call it the neo-industrialization. And this phenomenon is being rebuilt, but it's something that has been happening abroad, even because of geopolitical issues, as the moderator has already mentioned. And within this context, we have the institutionalization of this reindustrialization process via the CNDI that was already mentioned in a brilliant way by Dr. Verena, and their missions, the industrial and economic healthcare complex. And so, since April, we already have a decree that has created the executive group of the economic and industrial healthcare complex, so that we can institutionalize the policies for this sector. It includes many ministries and other agencies, such as regulatory agencies, the BNDES. It also offers the possibility for the participation of our society. We have the permanent forum, because great policies, they are always designed with the participation of everyone. Nowadays, fortunately, due to the topic we're going to discuss today, which is the green industrialization, nowadays we have been discussing the single or one health care concept that is not well known by the public, but it's been discussed a lot. One health care. It's being discussed by ECHO, WHO, the G20, and other organizations, which is a concept that health care has to be understood as a whole, based on a tripod: human care, animal care, and environmental care. This concept was born in the past after the diseases that are transmitted by animals, be it a pet, be it a wild animal, and the transmission of diseases by these animals to humans. And the environmental issue, it worsens the situation due to many factors. Nobody has any doubt in their minds regarding the worsening of worsening of the climate conditions, the world's conditions. So everybody's surprised with the rainfall in Brasilia in August. So we have had huge climate changes, and we are breaking temperature records over and over again. And so it's possible that human actions have been causing this. And these environmental changes and shifts, they tend to worsen these situations. Why? Because human populations are moving to other places, animal populations are moving to other places, and scenarios in which you have a higher possibility of having this transmission of pathogens. And so they leap from the animals to humans. So this environmental issue is very important when it comes to health care. And then we have several ways of discussing this topic when it comes to the economic and industrial complex. One of them is exactly the fact that due to the energy transformation, ecological transformation, we can make the industrial processes and productive processes to become less aggressive towards the environment. And on the other hand, we can also offer higher protection to the populations from these aggressive agents. The complex, and we use this at the Ministry of Health, we use the morphology of the complex, and it's subdivided into several subsystems. We have the chemical subsystem, the biotechnological subsystem. They offer many products, different products, which are the active pharmacological ingredients. We have vaccines. We have a high variety of hemo byproducts. We have genetic therapies, really advanced products. We also have the medical devices subsystem, and then we have prosthetics and other devices for cardiologists and for several diseases. We also have the information technology subsystem, the IT subsystem, and the service subsystem. And each one of them, they can become the object of an action because you can improve their ecological fitting in and their environmental sustainability. When it comes to medication, to the chemical and biotechnological subsystems, we have the possibility of developing technologies that create medication or drugs with a lower carbon footprint when they're being produced, and a lower possibility of creating pollutants. Some drugs, some production systems and productive chains are very polluting, very polluting. And on the other hand, we have another opportunity, which is the use of the phytotherapeutical drugs. And this is a very interesting perspective because they offer the possibility for you to create and so it's possible to generate income to populations that live in the forest, for instance. And we discuss a lot. Something that is going to be able to save the forest is for people to understand that a forest standing up is way, way richer than an area that is totally deforested. And this is an interesting perspective. When it comes to devices and equipment, we have the life cycle, the circular economy, in which you, in the productive processes, you use technologies that are less polluting and they generate less waste, and you can reuse and recycle materials. And so this is very important because we can create opportunities for us to. So telemedicine. So there is less need to use transportation, both for the healthcare professionals as well for the patients. The use of the point-of-care diagnostics or diagnosis devices. You transport a device or a gadget to diagnose a disease. You take it to where it is necessary so that people don't have to go there to do exams or tests, or you don't even have to transport samples, tissue samples, blood samples, etc. So these are technologies that cooperate for us to diminish our carbon footprint and also other impacts to the environment. And the issue regarding transportation. So the green energy transportation systems and vehicles. Regarding the logistics chains, the services chains. And finally, we also have the use of the state's purchasing power. It can be used to encourage the production of assets, products, and services that are ecologically sustainable. So that's it. I believe I can pass the floor to my colleague. Thank you, Marcelo. Excellent. I believe that you have shared with us interesting examples on how innovation can take care of our healthcare sector when it comes to processes, the development of new business models, new technologies, such as the digitization of our healthcare sector. And this is important even for the development institutions. And I believe that they're already paying attention to these examples. So now on the panel, we're going to have 4 speakers representing 4 development institutions, different ones. And I'm going to pass the floor to Mr. Francisco Saboya, the president of Embrapii.
Thank you for the invitation. I'd like to greet all of you here and our colleagues, and a fan greeting especially to Celso Panceira for the initiative and the invitation. And soon I will talk about Embrapii and what we've done as regards the economic and industrial complex of health. But firstly, I'd like to give a small context of what we're living in this country when we're talking about industrialization, and to which Verena is dedicated and has made a big difference in this country. The first issue is the recognition of a deindustrialization process, that is speed, is very fast. This is measured by various indicators, smaller participation in the GDP. We had the industry response for 35% of the GDP. Now it's 11-12%. The participation of the industry in the international commerce has 1.8% to now it's, oh, it was 3.6, now it's 1.8. So we see indicators that it lost a vigor. Deindustrialization is not always important because of natural process of a diversification of the richer countries. With the growth of the tertiary sector, services grows, the society urbanizes, this saves up, it's less intensive in labor force, it has more innovation, and the fact is that you start with economic development, you start to have a greater weight of the services sector, but especially those of greater technological intensity. In Brazil, we deindustrialized earlier. Our industry is incompatible with our level of development. We have diseases that only happen to more advanced economies, and that's a problem. So we need a new industrialization strategy, which Verena mentioned when she said about the new industrial policy, and the fact that Brazil can now say with way more calm of a strategy of reindustrialization because it accumulated evidence and competencies and political will to advance in facing this challenge. Verena also mentioned the issue of industrial policy is a social issue because it has to do with the health economic sector. We know very well it was a recent process of the pandemic and how we were dependent of production chains, at global production chains, production chains of which we are not much inserted. And we were stuck in these independencies, and this is not a good thing. So it is also an issue of sovereignty. So one of the purposes of this complex, and Mr. Gadelho and the minister have already talked about, is that reducing our dependence to these global supply chains to increase our autonomy without being autarkic and to have our needs met. But for that, we need to add to that policy not only of reindustrialization, not only a green component that is put here, but to emphasize the component of innovation. The reindustrialization cannot be cartorial, cannot be only for some sectors' demands, but it has to take a better, wider perspective. Innovation costs a lot. Innovation costs a lot. And in the area of pharmaceuticals, it costs even more. It's $1 billion in 10 years to put a new active molecule in the market. That's where we come in with. That's where Embrapii comes into the view. It works fundamentally in articulating a network of institutions of science and technology, of scientific and technological intelligence networks, in order to develop, demanded by the industry, and to directives of the development of the country. It's not an innovation, any segment, or any demand from any industry. It has to be aligned with the directives of the development of the country while defining the priority sectors. Fundamentally, Embrapii works in this direction of articulating the TICs of the country in order to connect them to the productive sector. Another role of Embrapii, which I wanted to show here, of co-financing this effort, which is the effort of innovation. Embrapii works in a model where we absorb and buy a third of the risk of innovation. So our model in Embrapii is more or less, Embrapii is to put a third of non-reimbursable projects for innovation projects. The industry that takes on that service pays the other third, and the Science and Technology Institute, which is a third, will take on the last third with her sciences, her labs, her infrastructure, and her technological capabilities. That's the Embrapii model. We have 96 Embrapii units. These are science and technology centers in order to work with innovation in very defined areas. Some of these areas directly connected to the economic industry health complex, be it in mechanic, electronics, computing, for prostheses or others, like you mentioned, the area of IT. Many experiences and innovations have been developed, always in partnership, always in network. So we can deal more directly with this. Of the 96 Embrapii units, 40 units work in the development of solutions that address health issues. Some in software development to manage, for example, the demand for gas, so there's no lack of gas, like it happened in the pandemic in Manaus, a traumatic process which we all went through. You have technologies for this. You have technologies to do laboratory exams that are simple in an almost instantaneous manner, with identification of cells, stand patterns, and sent by cloud. So for R$4 cost, you can do an exam and identify any pathology. So in these 4 In these 40 units, many are developing 240 projects. So we've dealt with 260 projects, sorry. And these involves 231 industries of the health industrial complex. Companies from the sector of health that are here they take on services in a level that is invested by Embrapii of 249 million reais. So look that it is an appreciable volume that is part of this philosophy of the Embrapii. When you buy it from this model, to buy the risk of what is essentially innovative and with perspectives that are greater to go wrong than to go right. So in the biopharmaceuticals, you have 10,000 attempts to generate a molecule to the market. So imagine the cost that is involved in this effort. And to finish this presentation, we would like to highlight that Embrapii is in a phase that Brazil recently, in their stage of development, scientific technological development level, Brazil wasn't well instrumented. It was in the pre-competitive. We have institutionalities very complex and sophisticated in the lower ranks. We have the CNPq, CAPES in financing research and students at the basic levels. On the other side, we have BNDES and FINEP working with reimbursable funds for the development and to bet on the market of products, on the more advanced products. But we didn't have until now in Brazil an institutionality that dedicated itself through this model of three-part financing of innovation. And now with Embrapii, we use resources from the Ministry of Science and Technology, Health, Education, and Industry and Commerce, and besides resources from FINEP, the National Development Bank, BNDES. With the volume of resources, it was possible for Embrapii to have activated like 1.2 billion in 10 years to finance and co-finance projects in the values of 3 billions and 100 million. So all of these projects directly connected to the productive sector, that's with whom Embrapii works, and with an appreciable amount of resources and projects dedicated to the health economic industrial complex. And the last comment, so that you, Verena, as the articulator and coordinator of this effort of creating a new industrial policy for the country, that we have a bigger effort of integration between these various agents and their instruments. Brazil, believe it, have a lot of instruments, a lot of institutions that work well and deliver very interesting results. But we would go further. But that was a conversation we had yesterday, Celso, that we could address with more clarity what are the nexus and complementarity that exist between the various institutions and their respective mechanisms, so that we can have an optimization of the resources, be they public or private, so we can face the challenge of reindustrialization of this country in new bases. That's it. That's just to start our conversation. Thank you, Chico. That's an important point. Besides the examples you gave, that we have companies in research, investing in research and development. Embrapii has this, and the idea of complementarity. You have different institutions with different profiles to deal with the different TRLs and what you have a more amplified view, to have the coordination of all instruments to be set as the compared to the profile of the company or some kind of technological challenge, the credit or the need to work with the institution, and is important in our composition of the panel this complementary vision, and from the point of view of industries like FINEP and regional, to be able to get in a coordinated manner to give flow of investment and demands, productive and technological in the industry. So in that idea, we'll go till the end, to the federal, from the federal to the regional. I'd like to hand over to Edmilson Gama from the BDMG. Good afternoon. It's a satisfaction to be here representing BDMG. I think it's the 8th forum we participated. We've participated in all of them due to the importance and the importance of development agencies and others that struggle in this network in order to bring it. There's complementarity, mutual understanding, and what moves us is the public interest and common interest. To participate in a forum like this is a reason for joy and satisfaction. I think the comments that were made by the colleagues before me explored the theme very well, especially in the health sector. But I would like to make a quick digression to speak a little bit about the Minas Gerais and the BDMG. Many things don't know, or that is a state that is fundamentally connected to the agribusiness, but in fact Minas Gerais has a very strong and very sector, and the industrialization of our sector is mixed with the history of BDMG. On the 21st of September, 61 years of age, since its creation, there was a big commitment in developing studies. Originally, BDMG had in its essence a proposal of proposing a state government of economic studies that would give legitimacy to public policies, and these studies were developed in the bank itself. There was a very strong concern with the industrialization of our state. This ended up creating a very fruitful environment and attracted over time very significant investments. For example, automotive sector with the presence of Fiat, that not only by itself as a car industry brings a strong component of creating jobs and income with a lot of innovation and technology. We've also a vanguard in attracting investment to other sectors like biochemicals, chemicals, metal mechanic, metallurgy. All of these were developed over time, and in a way or another, the BDMG was able to put in their knowledge, be it in the distribution of credit, in acting in capital markets. It's good to mention some investments we did 34 years ago in the capital markets at the time was still beginning in Brazil, and this shows in a very clear way this vision, this concern that our previous managers have had, and they knew the need to finance the industrial sector with resources that might face and be adequate to the maturity of an industrial plant. These programs and incentives have to be in adequate manner so that you can incentivize and attract private companies, that you have resources that can face and mitigate the risks of an enterprise of this characteristic at the industrial level. So the BDMG understands as necessary this effort that is being carried out in reviewing our industrial policy in our country. We gave an important contribution, not only as credit, as was given in previous panels. We understand that this new revolution of the green industry is inexorable. Today we financed a series of important projects in the industrial sector. These projects, in a way or another, will deal with SDGs, be it the 1, 2, or 3. So we're very comfortable in being able to participate in this joint effort, and maybe in a few years we will have a way more interesting indicator, our vision and seeing how other countries that similar at the economic level. We can see that a strong industrial sector is fundamental in importance so that we might have prosperity for our families and that we can have an adequate growth vis-a-vis the needs we have in our country. As regards the BDMG, it's important for us to be able to highlight the efforts that have been carried out to attract these investments so that we can have on one side the offering or of credit, availability of credit, but to have the industrial plants duly allocated, industrial programs adopted and put well forth. And so in Minas Gerais, we attract investments. This was created at the same time as the BDMG Invest Minas, that has been doing a very good work from here, from where it's been debated and attracted for our state, a very significant volume of investments in the great amount of sectors, including health. For that, BDMG works with a multilateral. Over 70% of our funding resources are brought from multilateral funds. So I was very happy in the previous panel when they mentioned the BDMG. We are in partnership with all agencies. These are very strong partners that we understand the need and sincerity of their actions, and therefore we believe that a new model, a new way of acting in the industrial sector, especially in the health industry, goes necessarily through this kind of investment.
That's why it's a challenge that we have, and BDMG is going to continue offering the support to the sector, and it's essential to do that. And I would like to emphasize another aspect regarding our work. So somebody mentioned the technological innovations, and a BDMG also is a stakeholder in a fund, and we have a very important portfolio in investments and companies that if they would get their credits in traditional financial institutions, they would not have access to the resources. So there is a risk in this business, but once we are already in adequate models such as the participation funds, the risks end up being mitigated, pardon me. And so we have important values for these companies, and sometimes the necessary conditions, they are generated, and so if they cannot get all of the resources they need, maybe most of them, and the results are usually interesting. And finally, to wrap up, and I believe we can go on to the debate, we should mention the work that the BDMG does in the healthcare sector. We work with credit in healthcare companies in the state of Minas Gerais, private companies. The BNDES is a partner and a stakeholder, and this is a concern that is totally appropriate and within the strategies of the bank. So in a very objective way, this is our initial perspective, and it becomes very clear how important it is for us to boost the economic growth of our country and its reindustrialization. Thank you very much, Mr. Edmilson. I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Rodrigo Secioso, the Innovation Superintendent at FINEP. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a great honor to be here representing FINEP. I'm here substituting Mr. Elias Ramos. And I would like to congratulate a BDE for this forum. And on behalf of Ms. Verena, I would like to greet all of the other members of the panel, and this panel has been very, very rich. I wanted to greet Verena right at the start because I want to use a little bit of some things that she mentioned to discuss this agenda with you guys. When we think about public policies, funding, technology, etc., we know that the financial resource is just a point of an iceberg or the point of a process, and sometimes it is not so clear to everyone. So the financial resources to be used properly to generate the economic growth and the results we expect, we need to have the pillars ready for that, and that's why I mentioned Ms. Verena. Ms. Verena is ahead of the industrial policies of the country. She's working there jointly with us so that we can have this. And at the same time, we have the recreation of the GICs. And so in the country now, we have an institutional alignment that is going to allow us to have a long-term policy thinking about how to solve the national problems. Otherwise, what we're going to have is what we see. A policy starts, you have a beginning of the funding, and then throughout time, everything is lost. And when we talk about economic growth, reindustrialization, we're talking about the long run. And we need to have this pillar. So the support to the economic and industrial healthcare complex is important to invest in that. And we also need to discuss capacity building for the government and for the society organizations. So we have technical centers that are very, very capable. You can think about the healthcare complexes. 10 years ago, we had no capacity to produce biological products in Brazil, and this could happen because of the public policies, and new capacities were generated so that we could create biological medication in the country. So if the SUS can purchase biological products from a company, a Brazilian company, is because we had this development in the past. We have FINEP, the BNDES, and other organizations, and Embrapii. They can give us the resources so that we can achieve these missions. And our society also has a mission. And lastly but not least, we have the capacity building, we have the institutional alignment, and we have the financial resources nowadays. And I'm mentioning the technological development fund. And so we can have sustainable funds in the certain amount, compatible amounts with the risks that any innovation involve. And so we have the Spark of FINEP. We have the ideas that are at the technological centers. We have economic funds, and so that we can mitigate the risks for the companies, and we have the credit. So besides that, we have the changes of how the loans are given. So FINEP uses a reference rate, and the BNDES as well. And why am I mentioning this? Because when we talk about restarting our industries, using new bases for them, we have a unique situation in the country. We have the opportunity after the priorities set forth, the priorities set forth by the Ministry of Health, we can deliver a new paradigm. Now, talking about FINEP's work and about this green re-acceleration, recently FINEP did something, well, last year, 2.5 billion reais in non-refundable loans. with companies, centers. We had point-of-care devices that were created. We invested in research infrastructure. So we invested in this, trying to generate solutions for rare diseases, because usually patients who have a rare disease, they don't receive good health care. And so 4.0 technologies, healthcare. Healthcare was the second largest sector that was supported to implement its 4.0 industry. And this happened with our agricultural sector. 4.0 technology, and we have already lent 4.4 billion reais. So we are growing and growing, and with this institutional and political element, we're going to be able to deliver new opportunities, new investments for our country. There are some novelties that are very interesting. We have already approved some processes. We're going to start a selection process. So when we think about a complex arrangement, a complex industrial arrangement, this is going to involve partnerships and enactment, approvals, and we are going to have a continuous flow. And our expectation is for us to be able to replicate the success that we had with the biological products, based on definitions involving the public procurement done by the state. And we aim to generate new capacities, new technologies, so that we can increase the SUS's capacity. Mr. Marcelo mentioned something important, that FINEP and other organizations, they can work with this, helping the service providers to increase their certification certificates. So many technologies to make their practices and processes more sustainable and safer. And I believe that the largest agendas when it comes to the green economy that we want to implement is the active ingredients, okay, the APIs. We went through a pandemic, not only when it comes to medical devices and equipment and the APIs, we saw the disassembling of the productive chains. So we depend on these technologies, and we need green APIs. And so we have bioeconomy. We can focus on healthcare, but we are totally dedicated to this. And I would like to also say that when it comes to the tools that are necessary for us to create effective public policies for this industry, we cannot forget the technological products. And this is in FINEP. And our Celso Pancera, the president, he is leading a work group so that FINEP can help the government carry out its public procurement, because what FINEP does is we purchase R&D, and how can we connect this with the government's buying power? And I believe that my initial remarks are those, and so I'm going to wrap up now so that we can have a good debate. Thank you, Rodrigo. Our time is almost over, but thank you. Everything that you mentioned was very interesting. So I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Paulo Costa, who is the president of Desenbahia. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. He said that my name is Paulo Costa, the president of Desenbahia, and something that I could share with you, that we are a development company from the northeast of Brazil. And so he said 2 billion reais. That's the size of our agency. So only this loan that you gave people is our size. So what we do in the healthcare sector is limited because of the size of our agency, because of our funds. There are only 200 people in our agency. And this is a challenge for us. And what could we do regarding healthcare access to our population? This is a complex challenge for us, and we always try to do everything that is possible. So we started working with the PPPs, and this was a step that we took, and it was the right step. So the state has some healthcare PPPs, and we took part in two of them. The first one was a large hospital in the Northeast. We have about 300 beds, 200 healthcare professionals, and it is a public hospital. It's an open door hospital. The model adopted was that the state built the civilian part of the hospital, and we funded the equipment. We funded the facilities. It was a successful case. The funding has already been paid off, and it was wonderful for us to take part in this suburb hospital. Another PPP that we worked with was the Couto Maia Hospital. We used to have an old hospital that treated infectious diseases, and the technical civil servants there were very competent. The technical civil servants, they were very competent, and we wanted to build another infectious disease hospital, and the first condition was to maintain that technical those technical civil servants. And so the doctors and the nurses, they are civil servants, and the other services, the admin services, food, security, transportation, this is carried out by the SPE that manages the hospital. We created a PPP, and so this infectious disease hospital was very, very important during the peaks of the pandemic. And this was another job that we did, and it generated a lot of success. We have another PPP that we did not fund, but it has to do with telemedicine that has already been mentioned, and this allowed us to generate an image in the countryside of Bahia, and then in Salvador, the capital of our state, a competent doctor analyzes those images. Unfortunately, we could not participate in other PPPs. We have been funding city halls, municipalities, because when you fund a maternity for a small municipality, this changes the quality of life of that population. They don't have to travel to have a baby. Sometimes traveling is difficult for the poorest parts of our population. So funding the city halls, the municipalities, whenever they need to work with healthcare, we have been doing that as well. We have funded other things for the municipalities, but we are always very happy when the mayors come to our office and ask us for help. We have medical clinics, dental clinics, small labs, even drugstores, or pardon me, pharmacies. We have been supporting them as much as possible because it's always difficult for us to create funding transactions. And so we have been creating a few things with Pansev, which is the civil servants healthcare insurance. We signed an agreement with Pansev, and whenever we fund somebody who is a member of Pansev, this goes to a escrow account, and then we end up receiving the payment of the funding that we offered to them. So we have a long story, but what I wanted to share with you is the development agencies, mainly the small ones, they have a huge potential. They can help people have access to health care. And so in the PPPs, it's important for us to participate, even if we are not the financial institution chosen, because there is a difference between a feasible project and a fundable project. We have to analyze all of the aspects, not only the return on investment. We have to analyze who is getting that funding, what kind of collaterals we're going to have. So it's a structure that goes beyond the scope of the project. And it's important for us to be able to make some kind of contribution And we are glad to do that. And we try to contribute as much as possible to improve the healthcare in our state. When it comes to the industrial aspects, I agree with everything that was mentioned before. And in Bahia, we need to produce drugs for the unified healthcare system, which is our public healthcare system. That's it that I had to share with you, and I don't want to take much of your time. This is what I had to say. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Paulo. So we already started late, and we are a little later. And they told me that unfortunately we're going to have to skip the debate. Otherwise, we're going to compromise today's program. And the president of Embrapii needed to leave. He apologized because he has a flight to take. And so, Paulo, you gave important examples to us to show how important it is for us to have this diverse ecosystem with different profiles, different federal organizations, state organizations, because we need to meet the demands of our population and their lack of access to healthcare. And this is an important development aspect of our system. To summarize 1 hour and 10 minutes of debates, to summarize a few points, I believe that it became clear and evident to all of us how important it is to have a national coordination that is going to work like a governance forum to make everybody move towards the same direction. Better than having one, we should have two. We have the G6, and we have people working hard, and I have been following this up closely. And why is this important? Because Rodrigo mentioned this. They coordinate instruments, they give guidance to the private sector. What are the long-term priorities of the Brazilian society, even beyond the Brazilian state and government? And so they have this double role. And by doing that, they increase the power of the industrial policy. So they can have small initiatives, and in the end, the society thinks that nothing is moving forward.
And to have successful policies, these are occasional. This logic of institutionality, coordination, will allow us that we, in fact, give big steps, visible steps, and that are significant to society. It is evident for society of the great industrial complex of the health, and a point that's very positive is that we have in this segment and in this complex, this chain of production, is a very advanced in terms of the great technological challenges, not only of Brazil, of the world as well. And this has to do having big national companies with national capital that have invested in research and development, and the examples given by our colleagues are of a big volume, be it in quantity or in values of projects for innovation. And with the strategic directives, this can be potentialized even more, and the existence of a solid base of science and technology in the academia and technology centers, some connected to Embrapii, not all to health, but developing relevant technologies to their sectors, and complemented these ecosystems by these development agencies or institutions, each with their own focus, complementary focus, and more than having development agencies is to have them with money, with conditions to finance. So when we join all of these elements and have clear directives, we have a great potential of seeing industrial policy giving results that are not simply, Verena, of production, increase of industrial production, but with innovation, increase in quantity, and innovation in the health sector, dialogues with the idea of sustainability, but also delivering important results to society and to health, and the health sector is one of them. We saw that during the pandemic, but in general, the amplification is a constitution. So I'd like once more, the last point that was mentioned, I think it's worth maybe in the next forum of the ABD to explore this complementarity that is through demand, innovation through demand. When we join the environment of missions is very good for this, and we get through the demand a greater potential, especially radical innovations that have more impact. So I'd like to once more to thank you all from the panel, thank the ABD, and congratulate them for the realization of this program to bring this dialogue. In the name of Minister Celso Pancer, I'd like to wish everyone good evening. Our thanks to the members of the panel. Feel free to take your seats in the auditorium.